It was a typical summer day on the sprawling farm owned by the Jackson family. The sun was high in the sky, and the fields were bursting with life. The sound of mooing cows could be heard in the distance, and the smell of fresh hay filled the air. Mr. Jackson was in his fields tending to his crops, and he was feeling content with his life. But little did he know that his peaceful existence was about to be shattered. One afternoon, as Mr. Jackson was making his way back to the farmhouse, he saw something that made his blood run cold. One of his cows, a normally placid creature named Daisy, was standing in the middle of the field, staring at him with an unblinking gaze. Mr. Jackson shook his head, thinking that he must be imagining things. After all, cows were not known for their intense stares or strange behavior. But as he got closer to Daisy, he realized that something was very wrong. The cow's eyes were now glowing with an eerie red light, and its mouth was foaming with an unnatural fervor. Mr. Jackson could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he stared at the possessed animal. Suddenly, the cow charged at him, knocking him to the ground. Mr. Jackson struggled to get up, but he was no match for the strength of the demon-possessed cow. He could feel its hot breath on his face as it pressed its massive weight onto his body. Mr. Jackson managed to escape the cow's grasp and stumbled back to his feet, his mind racing with fear and confusion. He had no idea what had just happened or why Daisy had turned on him. All he knew was that he needed to get away from the farm as quickly as possible. But he soon realized that it was too late. The demon had taken over the entire farm, and he was trapped in a nightmare. For weeks, Mr. Jackson lived in a state of constant terror as he tried to avoid the demonic cow and its unholy minions. The other cows on the farm had become possessed as well, and they would follow him around, their eyes glowing with the same red light as Daisy's. Mr. Jackson tried to call for help, but his phone was dead, and there was no one around for miles. He was completely alone with the demon cows, and there was no way out. The days passed in a blur of fear and paranoia. Mr. Jackson slept with a loaded shotgun by his side, ready to defend himself at a moment's notice. But the demon cows were always watching, always waiting for him to let his guard down. One night, as Mr. Jackson was dozing off, he heard a strange noise coming from outside. He grabbed his shotgun and cautiously made his way to the door. When he opened it, he was confronted with the sight of the demon cows standing in a circle around something in the middle of the field. Mr. Jackson could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he approached the circle. As he got closer, he could see that the cows had formed a ring around a pile of burning hay. The flames danced and flickered in the darkness, casting strange shadows on the faces of the possessed cows. Mr. Jackson realized that he was in the midst of some kind of demonic ritual. He could feel the power of the demon growing stronger with each passing moment. He knew that he needed to act fast if he was going to survive. He aimed his shotgun at the cows and fired, but the demons were too strong. They charged at him, their eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. Mr. Jackson fired again and again, but the cows kept coming. As he fired his final shot, he felt a searing pain in his chest. He looked down and saw that one of the demon cows had managed to get close enough to him to gore him with its horns. Blood was pouring out of the wound, and Mr. Jackson knew that he was done for. He stumbled back, his vision growing hazy as he fell to the ground. The demon cows closed in on him, their glowing eyes and demonic moos filling his ears. He knew that this was the end. But just as he was about to slip into unconsciousness, something strange happened. The demon cows suddenly began to convulse and writhe, their bodies twisting in unnatural ways. Mr. Jackson watched in horror as the demons were exorcised from the cows' bodies, leaving them lying on the ground, panting and exhausted. As he lay there, bleeding and weak, Mr. Jackson realized that he had been saved by some unknown force. He didn't know what had caused the demons to leave the cows' bodies, but he was grateful for it. In the days and weeks that followed, Mr. Jackson slowly recovered from his injuries. He never spoke about the demonic possession of his cows, knowing that no one would believe him. But he knew that something had happened on his farm that he could never explain. Years later, as he sat on his porch, watching the sun set over his fields, Mr. Jackson thought back to that terrifying time. He knew that he had been lucky to survive, and that he had witnessed something that most people could never even imagine. And as he listened to the sounds of his cows mooing in the distance, he couldn't help but wonder if the demons were still out there, waiting for their next victim. I hope you liked that story. If you did, please like and subscribe. I release a new story every day. If you have an idea for a story, leave it in the comments.